Brexit, Labour would back members on new vote, says leadership. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has said he would be ready to back another EU referendum, if party members want one. He said he would be bound by the outcome of a vote at the Labour Party conference, although he would prefer to have a general election. Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab ruled out a snap election this autumn, saying the idea was for the birds, and a Sunday Mirror poll suggests 86% of Labour members want a vote on the outcome of Brexit negotiations. The party has never formally rejected the option of a further vote, but both Mr Corbyn and his deputy, Tom Watson, have indicated they would prefer it to be resolved by a general election. Pressed on the issue on BBC One's Andrew Marr show, Mr Corbyn, who has said he is not calling for another referendum, said our preference is for a general election that would then allow a Labour government to negotiate the UK's future relationship with Europe. But he added, let's see what comes out of conference. Obviously I'm bound by the democracy of our party. The party has made several policy announcements ahead of its annual conference, which begins in Liverpool later, including. However, campaigners are expected to use the conference to pile pressure on the Labour leadership to support a further referendum, with MPs and union leaders set to join a march calling for the leadership to back the so-called People's Vote. And more than 100 constituency parties have already submitted motions calling for the Labour policy on Brexit to be put to a vote. Party officials will decide on the wording of any Brexit motion later on Sunday. BBC assistant political editor Norman Smith said much would depend on whether the motion clearly stated that Labour backed another referendum, or whether it would be more ambiguously worded so it did not tie the leadership's hands. Mr Corbyn told the BBC there would be clear votes on the issue, and Mr Watson said, it's a bit of a binary choice. You can't really fudge that. I would imagine the conference will be given a clear choice. Earlier Mr Watson told The Observer, if the People's Party decide they want the people to have a final say on the deal, we have to respect the view of our members and we will go out and argue for it. According to the YouGov survey of 1,054 Labour members, commissioned by the People's Vote campaign, 86% wanted a final, public say on the outcome of Brexit negotiations, against 8% who opposed it. But the Brexit-supporting Labour MP Kate Hoey described calls for another vote as the last gasp of people who had never wanted to accept the result of the 2016 referendum. She said another referendum was likely to be bigger than the last, and, if a bigger majority voted to leave, we're still in the same position. On Saturday, Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell warned people calling for a second referendum to take into account the real risk of stoking racial tensions and far-right populism. The UK electorate voted to leave the EU by 51.89% to 48.11% in a referendum in June 2016. The UK is due to leave in March 2019, and Prime Minister Theresa May has been negotiating with other EU leaders on the UK's future relationship with the bloc. Talks hit a stumbling block at a summit in Salzburg on Thursday when EU leaders rejected Mrs May's plan for Brexit, known as the Chequers Agreement, and she warned them she was ready to walk away rather than accept a bad deal.